old piece, copper pipe, imperial size, so about 7/8 of an inch. I think it's been replaced by 22mm these days. This was ripped out of an old hot water system. Same pipe brought indoors. I'm going to cut off a piece about 140mm. Pipe cutter. To be honest, a hacksaw would do just as well. This doesn't have to be neat and tidy because we don't care. But as I've got the pipe cutter handy, I use the pipe cutter. It's going loose again. Oh, there we go. There's our piece of pipe. Now I'm going to take a hacksaw and cut all the way down there. So I'm just going to cut from there all the way down there, but I don't want to go through both parts, so I want to go straight down here. It's getting tight, the vice is squeezing it in and it's trapping the blade, as you can see. So once I get that far, turn it round, squeeze that end. There we are, done. So that's been split all the way down there. Now we need to bend it open, and this bit is more tricky than it looks. If I use a big screwdriver, I can bend it open a little bit, but I can't bend it open a lot. That's gripping it too much. But you can see that it tries to spring back, but I'm starting to bend it open. But that's about as far as I can go, and then it will try and spring back. And of course it's damaging the edge, which doesn't matter too much, but we don't want a huge amount of damage on the edge. So once I get to that point, I put it in there and let the vice hold it. Right, next I get a small pair of pipe grips and try and get them in there. And once I'm in there a little bit, I can start trying to pull that open, and with luck, because it's opened a little bit at the bottom, the vice will hold it for me. And once I've got some of it started, you can see that, but as I try to pull it more and more, you'll see it try to jump out of the vice. Oh, there we go. But once we've got that much, we can usually get that to stay in place a bit better. Now I find that once I've got it this far, that's fairly open, I can put the bottom in and almost squash it flat. I'll have a go at shaping it. Right, so that's what we need to do. We need to shape this, and I need it to be flat before I worry about shaping it. So We need to do some bashing with a hammer. It would be nice to think you could get to this stage without doing all this by hand, but in fact trying to get this stage using power tools is a complete waste of time. They just skip across the surface. That's about as good as I can get the worst side of it, and that's about as good as I can get this side. Right, first thing I want to do is find the middle. This isn't a perfect rectangle, but I think it will be close enough. So if I go corner to corner and guess that the middle is somewhere in here, and go across that corner to that corner, that'll do. So we'll assume that that's the middle, and then because I want to know roughly where the middle is in terms of a sort of central support point, I'm just going to stick that washer there, put my finger on it and draw around it. So that'll be my middle part there, and then this is more or less the size of that, as you can see. So I'm going to put that on there, and I'm going to move it in a little bit so that I'm just off the end, and then draw around that, and hopefully that will give me that, and then I'll repeat the same thing more or less at this end. Like that. I think that'll do. And then I'm going to make this come in more like that, and more like that, and more like that, and more like that. That's going to be a petal, and that's going to be a petal, and that's going to be the middle point where they mount together. Now my petal is going to have lots of sort of veins on it, so I'm going to pick a spot which is roughly in the middle. Again, I'm not too worried about how perfect a middle it is, but if I say down there, we'll call that the middle. And now I want to divide this up, so I'm going to just take a guess and say that's somewhere around about the halfway mark, like that. So I'll move that over a fraction, and I'll do that, and then I'll do something similar on this side, and then I'll pick roughly where I think the halfway mark is on this side. I don't know that it matters how accurate any of this is, so that will give me a line, a line, a line, a line, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to split the difference. So for now I'm just going to go like that, and like that, like that, and something like that, and then the same sort of thing on this side, like that, like that. I don't think it matters how accurate you do this. At least I hope it doesn't, because I haven't done it before. Right, next, tin snips. I'm going to, and this is quite thick, this copper, I don't know if you can see at the end of that, that's quite thick, so but I'm going to try and cut. Oh, that's cutting fairly easy. Trying to stay roughly on the red line, but it doesn't really matter. Get that bit off. Right, and then we can go this way. For some reason, the tin snips cut better towards the end than further in. You'd think that further in they would cut better closer to the jaw there, but they seem to cut better at the end here. Again, I'll just get rid of that bit. Right, and let's round this one. Right, so it's just those two little bits left to nibble off. And of course, they're the most awkward bits. But we'll get in there as best we can. That's that one. Bearing in mind that we're going to be hammering away on this, so a bit of hammering and a use of a file, and some of the worst edges will be tidied up that way. Right, so there's the bits we don't want, there's the bits we do want. Petal 1, petal 2, central point. 2" or 50mm bolster. I've sharpened it, but it's not super sharp. I mean, it's not going to cut anybody's finger. And I'm going to put it on the central line, like that, if that is the central line, and bash. And then put it back there and bash again. It's just, if you can see, put a tiny little V in that. Go to this end. Now of course I'm no metal basher, I don't know what I'm doing, so obviously don't look at this and think this guy knows what he's doing and this is what you do. I'm just playing. Right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way out along those red lines that I've drawn. Right, and I think you can probably see it's got a bit of a roll to it now. It's beginning to sort of curve up a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep going round doing that over and over and over again to see if I can get a bit more curve to it. I've noticed if you put something soft under here, it does help give you a bit more curve. So if you put a couple of pieces of rag or something underneath it, that does seem to help. So if you put that under there, let's say, and then work your way around, that seems to increase the amount of curve. Right, now this piece I want to stay relatively flat. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to give it a gentle tap with a ball peen hammer. And when I say relatively flat, I don't mean completely flat. I need this to stay slightly curved because I want all of this to stay curved. I just want the middle to be flat because eventually I'm going to drill a hole through the middle. I can't hit down with that part, this hammer's too big for that. So but I think this would be easier to squeeze inwards, and if you look, that's beginning to go. Now hopefully you can see that that has now got some shape. I'm just going to run a file over the edges like this. It's just to get the worst of the sort of sharp edges off where it's been cut. Right, to help make sure that this bit's flat at the back, I've just put a socket in there. I'm in the vise. Terrible mess. If I squeeze that in, you can see that it pushes out these parts almost like wings, but it means the centre's now held fairly flat. So if I now push these back again, it's quite hard work now because that's restraining it, but you can see that I can push these back a little bit. I'll leave them there, I think. I'm not sure if that's even. It's very difficult to see because the camera's in the way. Centre punch. Just going to drill a 5mm hole. Hole drilled. I'm just using some IPA and a rag to get some of the red Sharpie ink off. Right, I'm going to use this piece of scrap as a temporary base. You can see I've been playing drilling holes in it when I've been testing out repaired drills. This side, corner to corner, found a centre punched it. I'm going to drill a 4mm hole in there and then I'm going to tap it for an M5 thread. M4. M5 tap. I put a little bit of oil on it, but I don't think it actually needs very much. Famous last words, of course, when the tap snaps. Oh, that's it, I think we're through. Yep. That's all threaded. Let's give that a quick deburr at the top. Right, I found this bit of scrap rod lying around, but it's got a funny shape cutting it here, so I'm just going to cut that piece off and then I'm going to thread each end M5. That'll do. M5 die, just turn this to get a pressure on it, then turn the chuck. The chuck will immediately slip, it always does on this, just not very good quality chuck, I guess. To give myself a little bit more leverage, I put a spanner on there. It's just beginning to cut a thread. I can just see a little bit of shaving coming off. Put a little bit of oil on there. Threaded at both ends, so threaded there, threaded there. I've given that one a little bit of a neck, so it should screw into there. Right, 1, 2. Now, I'm not sure if it would be better. I'm going to try a washer on there, then that on there, but I might not have enough thread by that time that goes on there. No, so I'll leave that washer out, put that on there. Let's see what there, we still haven't got a lot of thread. Now let's just see. Now if we use a nut like that, which doesn't want to go on, but there he goes. And there we have it. Let's tighten that up. We can find a, what's that, 8, yep. There we have it. Copper flower. Now, I'd like to do something with that rather than have a nut and bolt stuck in the middle. So I'm going to try and come up with something that can sit in the middle that's not a nut and bolt. The head of a carriage bolt. You can see I've machined off the threaded part because I wanted a stud, and this was the bit that was left over. And there's the same thing, I've just cut the square off. And that, I think, will make a nice button to go in the middle. It's obviously got to be smaller than that, and it's going to need a thread in the middle so that it can screw on. 4mm drill, top of old bolt. Going to drill a hole, not quite all the way through, if I can manage to not go all the way through. Going to start there and call that 0. With luck that's about 3mm, and it looks something like that. I can go about 6mm, that's all, otherwise I'll punch through the other side, so we'll have to see on that score. That should be about 4. That should be about 4.5. That should be about 5. See if I can get it to go in there, but I've got a feeling it's catching. Oh no, that's gone right in. Well, that is saying 6, and I'd worked out that it was roughly 6 was about the best I could manage. So we'll assume that's telling us the truth, and we've gone in there 6. Right, this is a middle tap. That's a bottom tap for going into a blind hole. So I'm going to make a start. I'm not going to start with the starting tap because I think this one will be plenty good enough. Push that up to there. Turn this round. That's starting to slowly chew its way in already, I can see that. I'll just put a drop of oil on there. I'm not sure if it shows on the video, but there's little bits of metal just beginning to come out there, so it is actually making some progress. Alright, what I'll do is I'll stop there, bring that out, and go to the bottom tap, because that's obviously going to go as low as we can possibly go. This one, it will only reach within about 3 or 4 mil of the end, so it would be useless for this. So I'll take that out, put that one in, get that out nice and tight. That shouldn't make any difference, obviously it's the same thread, so it should go in there. So we're in M5. That's going in easy because it's already threaded that part. At some point, there we go, it's just beginning to get tighter. Now the problem with this is always guessing if you're near the end, because if you get to the end and you still try and turn it, you snap the tap. Now it's hard to feel when you're doing it this way, so what I'm going to do is finish it off in the vise. Unfortunately, I didn't realise that the tap just put a tiny pimple at the top here, then broke through. So I've got a tiny little hole in the middle, which is a pain. But there's an M5 bolt. That screws in there, lovely. So I just need that to go in there now, because I want to turn this to a more suitable diameter. My best guess is we want a diameter here of somewhere around about 22. Obviously it hasn't got to be accurate, but somewhere around about 22 millimeters. Right, so we started with that, we ended with that. Pity about the little hole in the middle. I might put a spot of weld on that later and tidy it up. The problem with doing that is it might go through to the thread which is on this side, and then of course you're fighting a losing battle. But there's our flower. That should thread on there, which it does. Obviously I've got no real way of holding this while I tighten it up, but I don't think it's going to need a huge amount. I think if I put a rubber glove on I can probably get a good grip on that, and or even just turn it from the base like that. Yeah, look at that, that'll do. And there we have it, one copper flower. So we started with this and we ended with that.